This, okay, and then the tape.
You'll start that, you'll hit the button on the tape, you'll hit started.
It's on roll.
There we go.
Okay, I'm going to call the July 24th, 2014 Arundel Planning Board meeting to order. Start with a roll call.
Bob Coon.
John McKendry. Roger Moore.
Rich Canal.
Tad Redway.
Okay, the agenda tonight. First, we have to approve the agenda. We have several minutes that need to be approved. We have a new application. AIM has a conditional use pre-application review. We're scheduled to have a public workshop on the Townhouse Corner District. We'll be looking at bylaw revisions, and we'll have a planner's report.
I'd like to make a motion that we don't approve the agenda as written and move the minutes to item 6.
Okay?
Have a second on that?
I'll second.
No.
All in favor?
Yeah, that's quite okay. Motion's been made and seconded to move the approval of the minutes to the end of the meeting. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Application for AIM. They are before us tonight looking for a review, a pre-application review, and they wanted some waivers. And we have, I'm sorry, but I can't remember.
No problem. I'm Chip Haskell, I'm with CES engineer, representing AIM. Sure. So I think you've all received a packet of information from this. Essentially, what they're looking to do is expand their storage capabilities. Specifically, they'd like to store very short term of junk vehicles, basically. We have a fenced-in storage yard right through here. Vehicles would come in on a flatbed truck. They would be brought into this building right there, which is a depollution building. Vehicles would be drained of all fluids, all batteries, tires, anything that can possibly contaminate the area. So once they're depolluted, they're placed in this temporary storage yard for no longer than 3 weeks. I believe it's just 90 days in the write-up, but it is 3 weeks. After those 3 weeks, during those 3 weeks, the public is welcome to come in and strip parts, select the vehicle, take parts off of them, and then pay for them in this building right here that you see. After those 3 weeks, the vehicles will be taken off-site and crushed at another facility before they're taken off and scrapped. So as part of this, this is about acres on that. So it's about a 5 acre area through here. A lot of it is currently developed. About an acre of it, I believe, is currently developed. Let's see. So as far as waivers, we were looking into. I believe going down the list on this checklist, we were looking into the. Let's see here. First one was the high intensity soil survey. I feel like we can be fairly accurate with a typical medium intensity soil survey provided by the USGS on that one. Have any questions on what they're proposing to do on that?
You want to go through those item by item?
Yeah, I guess I think maybe run down this checklist. I don't know how you guys typically do this.
Or do you want to hear the whole list?
Let's do the whole list and then discuss the various items.
Okay. Sure. Well, we just mentioned the going with the medium intensity soil survey rather than the high intensity soil survey. In this case, where it's going to be impervious cover types put on this. It'll be parts will be paved, other parts will be used basically recycled asphalt pavement, which will be rolled, spread out and compacted. It's a very quite impervious surface. The next one, it asks for site distances to be delineated for the driveways. We'll be utilizing the existing entrance that's on there right now. Same entrance, all the same configuration there. So nothing's really changing there. Let's see. Next up was the landscaping plan. Again, nothing's changing up front. The landscaping, I believe, was already approved in the previous application. So, with that being installed, I believe it meets the current ordinance. I'm going too fast. Stop me. Next up was the traffic impact study. We've come up with a pretty good estimate based on other facilities that AIM operates, very similar to this. And we've scaled it down to meet this expected amount of vehicles to be stored here. We've come up with a vehicles per day type of expected traffic increase through this entrance. And it's very minimal. I believe it's in the realm of 20 to 30 vehicles per day. And I think if you add that to the existing traffic impact that's out there, we're still well below the 100 trips per hour that the DOT requires for a traffic moving permit. The next item was the groundwater study. Analyzing the individual and cumulative impacts of the proposed project upon existing groundwater quality. Again, where this site will be, for all intents and purposes, impervious. Vehicles will be drained, removed all contaminants before they're placed in the yard. This building here, where they're polluting them, is on a foundation. It's got secondary containment. All the vehicles, it's a quite a high-tech means of extruding trapping the contaminants out of these vehicles. So really, there's a very, very low probability of any of these, anything leaking out into the groundwater from that area. And if it does, right now we have a pond, a treatment pond right here. We're going to likely have either expand this or have another treatment pond below that to treat this impervious area. So any runoff from that area will be treated in some sort of a stormwater treatment device. Providing further treatment as far as groundwater contamination goes. Really don't see any real potential impact there. And then the three on the last page, the market study prepared by a qualified market research firm. Don't know that it really qualifies in this instance. Where it's like a small increase. Next up is the fiscal impact assessment. Again, it shouldn't have any impact to the municipal delivery system. There's no water service for this, no sewer service. We'll certainly run it by the fire police, just make sure everything's laid out okay, where there are some buildings there. And the last one is written copies of all state and federal approvals prior to the application being passed through the town. The issue there is we will have permits that are required from the state. The solid waste permit amendment will be the big one. And the big thing with that is that's quite a lengthy process. That's a 9-month at a minimum for their processing. What I'd like to do is make sure that this site is permitted, approved through the town before I go through the NDEP process. I hate to have to make changes through DEP again. It's financially and not very timely in that regard. So I was hoping we certainly intend to get the permits, and I was hoping we could do some sort of a conditional approval of this application, conditional on the approval of the NDEP permits. So, that was the extent of our waiver requests. Any questions?
let's start at the top of the list, guys. Anybody have anything about the soil survey? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I have a couple, and it goes to a couple other areas too. I have no difficulty doing the medium, but I'd like to schedule a site walk first.
Absolutely.
The other, before we grant that, the other item that I haven't been able to pull out of here is wells on the neighboring properties, which would go to a couple of the other requirements that we have. What is the proximity? What is the runoff? What, you know, there's not a grading plan, so that will kind of go with your stormwater management. What direction is it running? Where are the wells? That kind of stuff.
I can give you a general idea as to what the stormwater intent is. I don't know where this would be the only well on this property here that would possibly be affected, but I doubt that either way. But generally, this whole area will be flowing down towards the east there to either this treatment pond, which would be either rebuilt to today's standards and expanded, or create another structure of some kind there. So the general intent is for that all to be treated. We collect that likely in a ditch along the bottom portion, and that would all be brought to a treatment area before it's sent off site. So,
Let the record show that Marty Kane has joined us.
The meeting started early?
It started at 6:30.
Okay, I apologize.
That's all right, we had enough people. I have a question. In terms of the soil survey, I can certainly understand where a high-intensity soil survey for the entire site would be burdensome. But in my opinion, I think we should consider high intensity for the areas that are being expanded, primarily that vehicle salvage yard. I think that's the only real expansion.
yes, that's
I
right.
understand that. Because there is, although it's a small chance, there is chance of pollution, and even though all the fluids are drained, there are still some residuals.
Yeah.
So I would personally feel more comfortable with high intensity on the proposed expanded area, and then medium intensity on the rest of the site. I don't know how the rest of the board would feel about that, but that's my opinion on it.
Now, is this something that would be during our site walk, if we take a look at this and take a look at those soils when we're out there?
If you want to delay these waivers until that time, or if the board wants to.
Or at least that one, you know, I mean, I think, I don't know how soon we'd be out there for a site walk, but, yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the major points of the high-intensity soil survey are pretty much, test bed in various locations and getting some sort of soil classification on what's down there.
Right.
And we can certainly, send somebody down to do that. So, yeah, I think we'd be agreeable with that if that's what everyone else proposed.
Anything else? You guys have anything else?
Not on that.
Not on that point.
I'm fine with that. I think John's proposal is to, what's that, not to do that after we go sidewalk.
Great. Anything on the site distances?
I don't know where doing the site distances is a burden, really. You basically have to do it anyway. You know, I mean, you've got the whole plan here, so I don't know.
Well, we'd have to send somebody, to get an accurate assessment, we'd have to send somebody on the site to do a survey where those points are, correctly. To basically set it off 7 feet from the roadway. At this height, you go out and you measure out how far out you can see that target. We certainly do it. It's it's just an extra site visit, which is times like.
Did we do it for the last time they came to us, which was a year ago?
No,
we had that.
we didn't require it.
So the site distances are good on that location.
They are, I just drove down there on the way here and they're
Flat, yeah.
wide.
It's a pretty wide open land. you're going to see
Yeah.
any of the print. My question, I guess, to the board, even to the planner, to yourself, I don't know the difference. You're going to now be bringing in flatbed trucks, so sight distance kind of put into the entryway. No changes are going to be required. Is there a dimensional change in the front?
Well, there's currently quite a few trucks that are entering that site to begin with. They have a lot of container trucks that come in there to either bring material in or take
So
material out.
currently we have.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like I said, the question. Yeah, I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah, so one question that I have is a thought on this, where you're proposing everything to be back here. How does Joe Public going to access back?
The intent there, they've got the two scales up front. Basically, at this point, they're looking at either running the public over one of the scales or in the space provided between the scale and the building. There'll be a designated, they'll be basically improving this area through here to get up and around. A lot of these piles will move to provide access to that parking area. Again, this is a very preliminary plan at this point. So the idea is to get vehicles out and around here to this parking lot, and this is all a fenced-in parking lot to separate the vehicles, parking vehicles from the operations on the site.
You don't want to park your vehicle in the large spot.
No, you don't.
You might be pitched.
Might see airborne. Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern is the board is still going to have to state in your findings of fact that in fact meets those standards, that it does meet that site distance standards. You're going to have to state it one way or the other.
Okay.
You can say it's in excess of, or you can send out a survey, but you're going to have to show and state on your plan that it meets that site distance.
Yeah. We don't need it measured down to the 10th of an inch.
Just from the plan, sure, we can do that. Yep. Okay.
Any questions on the building plans?
Yeah, you're a couple. If you're using prefabricated buildings, you already ought to have the building schematics and.
I believe it's prefab. I'm not entirely sure on that. That was what I heard before. I think it's some sort of a dome building, but yeah, we should have some sort of schematics, and I can provide that along.
If those would be provided, that'd be comfortable. Especially any additional lighting, if you're going to be putting lighting on those, if there's any exterior lighting on anything.
No, there's no proposed lighting for this development.
And the buildings you're referring to are those two in gold in the center?
Yeah, this one in particular.
Yeah.
This one's just basically an office trailer.
So it's not big.
So
Yeah, we should have some kind of plans so we know what we're dealing with.
we can have a look at that for you, sure.
So we'll delay that waiver until we see that.
Yep.
What about the traffic impact study?
Do you have good documentation on traffic at your other sites?
Yeah, we have some estimates. Most of those are quite large, or some larger facilities, but like this how we scale them down. If they had 5,000 cars, and this one's got 200, we scaled it down to meet that. They've got several sites that we picked from, and several sites that are just without that. So we have a pretty good understanding of what they're expecting for traffic. They certainly developed that as part of their business plan. So.
Again, from my point of view, if you're asking for a waiver, before I'm comfortable saying yes, I'd really like to see that documentation and see, if we can make a good judgment based on that,
Sure.
or if we need to go to the traffic study.
Along your lines, what is the traffic flow now, presently,
Right.
before you go?
Sure. Right now, it's right around, I believe I had an email the other day, it was 50 to 60 vehicles per day, somewhere in the vicinity. And this is looking to add another 20 to 30, possibly. So that's kind of what they're expecting from this development. And like I said earlier, it keeps it well below the 100 vehicles per hour, 100 trips per hour that the DOT requires for traffic control permits.
Now, along that lines, I know, because I'm somewhat in the business, is there going to be somebody there to try to answer the phone to say, well, yes, I have this type of vehicle and parts there? I mean, because you got a lot of ones that just drive in anyway,
Sure.
but you don't anticipate. Or you got a lot of others that you're on call
Right.
looking for Pacifics.
Yep. I think, this will be very similar to the other operations that they have. And they will certainly have an inventory of what they have on the lot. Not having, parts and whatnot that are in them, but, that'd be safe. But as far as what vehicles they have, yeah, they'll know what they have on site. But yeah, I can send out some documentation on what, the basis of that traffic estimate.
The traffic impact?
Yeah, whether we will consider it, if we, once we see the,
I want to see the documentation to indicate, because I'm looking at it going, they're talking about, you're currently getting 50 or 60 a day, and the standard for MDOT is 100 an hour?
Yeah. So we're well below this.
Yeah, I would say. I'd like to, it would be interesting to see what you have on your other sites.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I think, I did look at the ITE manuals as well, just to see what they may have for comparable sites. And there's really nothing that's even close enough to this type of facility to really create an estimate from that. It's really more, I think our best bet here is going to be to go from a similar facility and see what they've got for traffic and kind of do what we've done in that regard.
Any questions on the groundwater study?
Well, again, I'd like the wells, you're gonna redo your countermeasure plan,
Oh, the SPCC plan?
right?
Scope prevention and control countermeasure? Yes, that'll all be done as part of the solid waste permit through NDEP.
Yeah, I'd still like to see where any wells are.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be shown on this, if it's, yeah. Yeah, it may
You are
only,
submitting, you're submitting the whole project, so to DEP as a proposed change to the other end.
yes, to their solid waste amendment. They already have an existing solid waste permit, but this will require amendment. And that's quite a thorough process. So like I said, I'd like to make sure that we have all of our bases covered here before we go and spend 9 months and thousands of dollars in DEP to get this done. So.
does DEP's groundwater requirements or groundwater studies cover what we're asking for?
I'm not sure. We've got an unusual situation here. If you look at the site, Chip hasn't had a chance to grade it yet, and he's not going to until such time as he knows which direction he's going in. But this is going to be a substantial change in the topography. He's going to have to blast, he's going to balance his cut and fill, so there's going to be some significant blasts and significant filling. What you have as a result of that is you're going to have a lot of granular material there. Tell me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you're going to crush the material on site and reuse it and then ship it out. So it's going to be very porous, and my concern, and I've already expressed this concern, is the porosity of the material that's going to be base here, and that getting into the groundwater. And I've expressed that concern, and Chip has talked about remedial action, because you're not going to pave the surface, you're going to use reclaim, which, although it's 90% impervious, it's still not impervious.
Yes, and I believe you and I had talked later in that meeting of using basically a roadway geotech style underneath our buildup, which would be what they call a Mira 5600X, and that's it's quite a solid material, which keeps water, keeps things from entering, from leaving your gets things out, basically not down.
Yeah, so based on your comments there, Pat, I think I would want to see what's being proposed before we can decide whether we can waive it.
Yep.
Because I wasn't aware that there was going to be that much cut and fill.
I mean, even,
Yep. Well, I mean,
This is a layout plan, he hasn't done
Yeah,
it.
right.
yeah, I mean, there is a fair bit of cut and fill. I mean, basically, you're talking 10 feet on one side, 10 feet
But
of
you
fill.
understand what we're saying, how can we make a judgment until we know what's being proposed?
Yeah, I mean,
Are you putting that underneath that, are you not,
Put in what underneath?
This layer
The
of
material.
material.
Yeah, we're proposing, we would put that fabric under the entire parking lot.
We
Really,
don't have that in front of us.
no, you do not.
This is the concept.
Again, it's just a concept plan, I'm trying to see what sort of efforts required here, that's all.
With that, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, really, it makes the underlying substrate kind of a moot point where we have an impervious, relatively impervious surface, have an impervious membrane below it, treatment ponds or treatment structures, down gradient, and for all intents and purposes, fully drained vehicles. Very low potential for any sort of contamination. But, we can certainly provide a detail, if that's what you're looking for, as to what the buildup of material would be there.
Right, and we would still have a grading plan.
Absolutely,
regardless.
absolutely. Again, waiting, without knowing how my stormwater is all gonna work, I didn't. How does the board feel about the market study?
Why do we have
I think we've mentioned this before, without requiring services, and I think there's that potential for lots of additional services, lots of additional traffic, where you may need the roads, you may need lighting, traffic, maybe even fire, this doesn't seem to apply.
Well, but
The market study is,
just whether it's going to be economically successful.
or in a situation, I mean, the market study has always been intended to be a flexible thing. Like the board uses, it's optional, it's not required. And it would be something for reuse of the building, to make sure that reuse could actually be viable. It might be for the, let's say, somebody were to create a pad to a mining operation, to create an industrial pad and see whether or not the pad's even viable in the market.
Yeah.
Something like that might be really within the board's interest. In general, you don't really ask for the market.
Since this is really a rehash of an existing successful business.
Yeah, I don't think this is, we're not trying to determine whether or not these guys are going to succeed. It's a situation in really adaptive reuse situations, what we call for moments.
From the fiscal impact point of view, yeah, I don't see much that would happen there.
They're gonna get the vehicles no matter what. They got counted, either before or after.
Yeah, but this Marty, is the fiscal impacts of the town, and that's really not going to change. Because we're not going to deliver anything we're not delivering now. I don't think. Is there an increased fire hazard here?
I mean, there's no real, there's no heating system other than maybe left the heat through here maybe, but,
The only thing I can think of is where you're doing the draining the hazardous materials, possibly oil and gasoline.
sure.
How
long
is
will
that
they-
stored?
How long will they be left on site?
The vehicles?
No, the hazardous oil,
Oh,
gas.
this is going to well, as soon as they're relatively small tanks, those will be drained as soon as they're full.
You're presently doing that now, right? Bringing materials out.
Now on site?
Yeah.
I don't think they have too many vehicles on site right now.
They have
One
a
of your
small
requirements.
facility.
Right.
One of your requirements, everything has to be drained.
Absolutely. Certainly whatever they have on site is being drained. I don't think it's not a big part of their operations at this point. But yes, they do drain, any vehicle they do get, they do drain.
No, it has to be drained before it comes in.
Well, they have a draining facility on site.
That's why I asked the question, what they're taking in right now. They're draining it, where are the drainages being stored?
Right now, they do have a draining system. Down that vicinity, in that concrete pad, they have a set of tanks that they drain vehicles from. But this will be under a covered building with secondary containment.
Okay, the last one that's on here is the MDEP approval. And to me, I think this is the big one. Our regulations and our procedures say that we need to have a complete application before we proceed. I don't think we can proceed without the DEP approval, without that license being in place.
Well, you mean proceed, I was thinking in terms of final approval, we could certainly make final approval contingent on that, but you're saying it's not complete
It's not complete. We don't have the
unless we
approval from
wait.
DEP.
We've required in the past, so that they show us their submission, posted that they've applied for their permits, and then had a project on condition of that. Not only the approval and what he says, but that we look at and make sure after the results on that is all taken care of.
Yeah, you're right. In the past, we've done it on just their application, not the accepted
So they
or finished
and
approval.
prove to us that they made all of the
Right.
submission requirements.
Is that workable to you, to submit to DEP, but not necessarily go through the process?
It's more workable. My only real concern is I just want to make sure that things are the same. I hate to go two different paths, you know, with a design that may change,
Right.
and then have to go back to it, because it's a, you guys know, it's quite a process with DEP, quite an application package. I can guarantee you this will be brought through the solid waste amendment process, or else they can't do this.
What we've done in the past, as Bob said, is we've gone through the whole process here, worked out all of the ins and outs, but then before
Yep.
the actual process, before we actually do the official
Final.
application, then you submit to DEP, so we know we're all on the same page.
Sure.
Well, not even final approval, we did it, you know, at the beginning of the process, because what Rich is saying, we need a complete application.
Yeah, no, to your one comment, is what you did before.
Yeah, prior to final approval
Right.
is when we would bring off.
Everything's got to be done before, both.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can start the process. You can submit the applications, and we can start reviewing it, but before final approval is actually given, it all has to be done.
Right. So basically, as long as I know, really what I'm trying to avoid is any changes that have to take place through the town. It's a big change for DEP. And I mean, this is you all know this is a several month long process of preparing the application to DEP. So it is quite a financial and time hardship to go back and make changes. So I think you're right. We can get something concrete ahead of time. We know that it's an acceptable design. If I can move forward with that with DEP, that would be the case.
Mr. Chair, I guess what I'm saying is very different. I feel that by doing this sidewalk, by getting the extra submissions that have been requested to bring before the board, eliminating some of the other materials, looking at some of the contours and that. There's obviously no guarantee, but I think the board has been very open with you and saying these are the things that we would like to see. Meaning if you do those things, that comes out acceptable, your trail at the end ought to tie up.
That's
At
all.
our end ought to tie up.
That's all we ask. Yeah, like I said, we just want something concrete that we can make sure we're only submitting to DEP.
Do you have any concern there?
I think our next step would be to schedule a sidewalk.
Yeah, I would feel comfortable, Mr. Chairman, if we just went through these quickly and gave the board's decision, if you will. I know we didn't vote on them, but we had a discussion on each, so that our applicant knows where the board stands on each item.
I agree, but I think when we look at it, we look at the first one, the high-intensity soil survey. We can't make a decision until we've done the sidewalk. We've got to look at the property.
So that's our position.
That's our position. We have to look at the property.
Yep.
In terms of the site distance, we need something that indicates that
Yeah, I'll put that
that is met. The building plans, we want to have copies of the plans for the building that you plan on putting on site. The traffic impact study, we need the documentation from the other sites that they're running.
Yeah, how do you get yours?
The groundwater study, we need to have the wells marked out on the plan so that we can, I get concerned about the groundwater issue, particularly if there's going to be blasting. I don't want to screw up the neighbor's
We
wells.
need to see what the plan is.
Well, also, which also brings up, within that, you have a blast plan and so forth that you have to submit.
Yeah.
So part of our review is looking at, are those neighbors protected in the wells and so forth. So we need to see that plan as well.
In terms of the market study, I feel comfortable saying we don't need that. And I don't think we need the fiscal impact.
Do we want to, do we need to vote on those two? We're going to provide the waiver, or do we want to wait until we have all this?
I think we should wait until we have all of it together.
Mr. Chairman, one of your groundwater studies, you may want to find out how many abutters or distances that are from there, that are actually on wells or on public water. Along the way, so if they're on public water, they may not be on a well or overall.
We are concerned with the contamination of the well water and what's going to happen to the.
But I think also in the past, when it first came about,
Foundations are concerned.
foundation, there were a lot of test pits.
But that'll show up, the foundation issue will get taken care of with the blast.
Should,
Yes.
yeah, should. We were dealing with groundwaters or location of those groundwater sites and
Yep.
distances. It is the critical item for us. But I agree with you, but that comes with the last
Now, does the town have information as to where those well locations are on those properties?
That's how old they are, probably.
That might be a problem.
Recently, yes, but not within the last 15 years now.
I'm just wondering, I mean, and really the only, this is all the industrial park up through there, as you know.
That's important, too.
And I assume, I'm just wondering, I assume there's public water through one.
Yes.
So this is really the only parcel, and that's right off Route 1. I would assume they're on public water. I'll check into that, I guess.
You may have.
Don't assume anything.
No, that's why we'll look into it. But that really those are really only abutters near the proposed development.
And then in terms of the waiver for MDLT, MDEP rather, I think just the submission that showing us that you have actually submitted it, when it comes up to review the plan, should resolve that issue.
Yeah, once we get further along with the whole
Right,
process.
we're willing to work on
Right.
details with
Yeah.
you
That'd be
prior
great.
to that.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay?
Second.
Yeah, we need to schedule the sidewalk.
Have to make a motion to review it before the meeting.
Well,
At the night of the meeting, before the meeting.
The next meeting is the 14th, then you have one on the 28th.
when are you going to, he has some action to take here, Mr. Planner and Mr. Chair. Is there a way we can tentatively schedule one, as long as he's able to identify where it is, and there's no point, I don't care to go out there if we don't know where anything is. I think you need to know
How
where.
thick is it
I
out
think
there?
you need to know where the wells are. and then you can- that's-
It's been really quick.
Yeah, are you going to have time to mark all of that out and get that information?
So you need this roughed out then?
Yes,
as well.
we would like it more.
Okay.
Do you think 4 weeks would be sufficient?
Yeah, I think we can try and get that out. And like I said, if it's not be a problem, we can certainly let me plenty of notice.
Okay. Yeah, and 4 weeks out would be plenty of notice. So,
28th.
the 28th,
What day is that? So
that's Thursday.
Thursday, or something.
That's the second meeting that we would have in August. What do you say, 6 o'clock?
Yeah.
nothing
That's a
before.
pretty big thing. Six, is that what you said?
6 o'clock, the 28th. Okay,
Well, thank you very much for your time.
thank you. proceed into the public workshop on the townhouse corner district.
Okay.
Mr. President, did you by any chance print out the PCD district?
They're right there. I'm gonna change the camera angle.
It probably is. I had asked him to print some out for the folks in the audience that could have some to read.
I'll just do it this way.
Yeah, that's a couple. I want to thank all of you for coming out.
Anyone here, think it's on that line? I don't have this in the map.
We need to address this issue because the comprehensive plan committee at the town meeting had this on the warrant and it passed, so we're now working on developing all of the standards. We had developed a lot of this information back to go on the warrant, but at the public hearing that we had in May, there were some issues brought up and we didn't have enough time to make changes to them. We thought we would invite all of you here to go over everything and we could look at it together, figure out what it is that we're going to do. If there are things that you like, things that you don't like, things that you think we should change. I would appreciate hearing them.
The changes that the board has agreed on from the other hot zone,
I'm already included in here.
from the last public.
No, I don't think you, I don't think all of them are, or most of them.
Okay. Okay. You're done.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
First of all, has everybody got a copy of those regulations, and does everybody have a map?
No, I don't have a copy of the regulations.
Would you like one?
Yes, I will.
They're free tonight. And maps, anybody need a map? It's memorized. Anybody else need a copy of the map?
Yeah, I like that.
You need a copy of the map, okay? And the second thing I would ask is everybody signed in. We won't release this to the NSA, we promise. But is everybody signed in? Okay. Because we want to know if you came. Okay, very good. Our format's pretty loose tonight. We can give you a long presentation, which I think would probably be appreciated if that didn't happen. However, what we do want to do is that let me give you a brief history of the Townhouse Corner District. Townhouse Corner District was proposed probably starting in 2011 when it was first discussed. And the reason why it was considered was simply because this area had been changed in 2005, and actually a couple of years before that, into a rural residential district, primarily because of its undeveloped state. There's a lot of large parcels of open space out there, some important natural resources, including Gulf's Mill Brook, and there was a sense of wanting to retain some of the character of that entire area, down in the Townhouse Corner and its surrounding environs. What we noticed, though, is that there also, historically, this area has, in the past, been a business district, or a mixed-use district is what it really needs to be called, in which businesses and residences coexisted dating back into the 19th century, which was the typical land use pattern at that particular time of having businesses and residences in the same location. Obviously, if you're a wheelwright, a Cooper, you had your house next to your shop and you did your work. In this particular area, we had farms, we had farm stands. We also had, I think it's Jim Gross who's documented in the past, we also had a very large trolley service that was centered down in this area. And there's been a wide variety of different businesses in this area. In the intervening years, there have still been some businesses, and there are existing businesses that operate in this area. This, of course, being one, there are many others down in that area that operate as well. The concern was that the current zoning was basically strangling those existing businesses that actually predated a lot of our zoning in general. And at the same time, we also saw an opportunity to perhaps allow those businesses to thrive, expand in certain places, and also take advantage of some of the traffic opportunities that are along Long Cannon Road, and also going into the Kennebunk area, the back door of Kennebunk Court. That there were some business opportunities, but the concern that we heard in two public hearings, actually, I should say two workshops that we had with citizens in the intervening years, was that there was great concern that whatever was going to happen here was going to be a scale that fit with the existing residential character of that area, and also not be such a generator of traffic or a generator of activity that would disrupt the character of that neighborhood, disrupt its livability for those residents who are there and who will continue to live there, and those who may want to subdivide their land and use it for the purposes of themselves or investment properties. And therefore, the planning board and essentially the comp plan committee put together a program where we would have limitations in the sizes of any non-residential buildings down there, and also design standards to ensure that it fit into the general character of the neighborhood, especially the residential characters of the existing homes in that area. And so that was pretty much of the mandate that the Comprehensive Plan Committee put upon the planning board. We had already started working on this, but had pretty much waited until the Comp Plan Committee had completed their work. In June of this year, the Comp Plan Committee's recommendations were forwarded to the town for consideration and for approval. And in fact, the townspeople did in fact approve the Townhouse Corner District as a new district in the comprehensive plan, and recommended the planning board that they proceed to develop some regulations for that. The planning board did that, and at the May 22nd public hearing on that, heard a lot of comments from citizens about the nature of this district. And there were some concerns there wasn't enough input from the neighborhood on both the existence of the district, what its impacts would be, and some of the design standards and some of the proposed uses that the planning board was implementing via the comp plan. So consequently, the planning board decided to pull it back, not put it on the agenda for the town meeting, and hold another public hearing or another workshop in order to make sure that all folks in that particular affected area were notified. Now, we had received some complaints in the past that we had our meetings during the winter. Of course, each meeting was during the coldest day of the winter. In order to give summer folk and also those folks who will find it easier to come out in the summertime an opportunity to come out, the planning board asked that we in fact hold another public hearing or another workshop, calling a public hearing, forgive me, to hear from the residents on their concerns, their ideas, their recommendations, so the planning board can finish this up and make adjustments that fit with the neighborhood's concerns. And also, one of the complaints that we heard was that only residences, I shouldn't say residents, but those property owners in the designated area would be the ones who would be contacted. Well, this time we notified just about everybody along Arundel Road, notified folks on all butters we could along Log Cabin Road, going all the way almost in many cases back to Senate Road, notified folks on River Road, where on the other side of Goffs Mill, we notified all the folks in Middlebrook subdivision, and took it all the way up past John Clough Road. We wanted to make sure that all the neighbors, those people who would be affected by this district and those people who would be abutting this district, would be notified by mail, in which we did in fact do. So all of your neighbors, I assume some of you may not be property owners within the district. You might be neighbors concerned about what's proposed and where we're going. And I'm glad that you came out tonight. Thank you for this turnout. What would be expected? We don't really have much of a format, as I said, what to proceed with. But I think you all have the maps. I've had several calls during the week asking you what's the intent. I think I've explained that a little bit, and I think you'll find also in the document, in the planning board's draft here of the regulations for this particular district, it kind of explains the preamble, what the goal is. The next thing that you'll notice in it is permitted uses. And these are uses that would be permitted in the district. They would be reviewed by the planning board in cases where they meet the site plan review thresholds. Meaning if you're going to put up a brand new big old building, you're going to have to come see these guys and get a permit to do that. But there are uses that are permitted by right. These are the kind of uses that we are proposing. Conditional uses are uses that are permitted by right with conditions. That means there are certain conditions that are placed upon them that are in the zoning ordinance. They have to meet certain standards in order to get that approval from the planning board, but they're permitted by right. And then the thing that's interesting about it is that although we don't have it in here, uses, the new zoning ordinance is going to be what's called an omitted uses ordinance, which means if it isn't listed, it's not permitted. So we aren't going to have this big long list of unpermitted or non-permitted items, prohibited items. It's basically, if it's not on the list, you can't do it. So it makes it a lot easier. It's by exclusion. So essentially, what we have is a list of many different kinds of uses, and they're rather wide-ranging. And then also, you'll notice that, without getting into too much of it as well, we also have the district defined clearly on the map handout that you all have. And you'll notice there's kind of three different components. The first one's along the Rundle Road, and that goes basically from Middlebrook subdivision all the way along to Sinnott Road. Right? It ends at Winks and then jumps across Sinnott Road. It goes all along Log Cabin. You'll also know that it only shows those properties that have direct frontage on Log Cabin. And the only difference to that is at the top of the sheet, you'll notice the tag John Clough Lane. You'll also notice it's a little darker gray. This is the area that had been requested by residents and business owners up in that area, that the John Clough Lane also be included in this district, whereas before it was just the boundary. The reason why is there's two and the third business going in that subdivision, and it essentially has businesses on it right now, and they wanted to be included in this particular district. And so the planning board did in fact think that was a good idea, and that is in addition to what was originally proposed in 1972 when we've been here. I could keep going, and I probably shouldn't. What we want to do is get comments from you folks, concerns, any comments that you have, any questions you have about this district, first of all, about the district, whether or not what your feelings are about the district, and second of all, the extent of the district, and third of all, the kind of uses that you feel are appropriate or inappropriate, and what your concerns are. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll just open it up.
Are there any questions? If you would be kind enough to state your name for the record.
Okay, Florian Woodrow is my legal name, okay?
Thanks,
Thanks, Florian. I have a question on the maximum lot coverage. On 20,000 square feet lot, 80% have a building 16,000 square feet. Am I correct? 80% of that?
The minimum lot size, yes, at 20,000 square feet, that net developable density. It may actually, the lot itself may be bigger, but you may not
I
be
know,
allowed
but
to
you're
build.
talking about that size.
But yes,
With public water.
I think that's quite a bit myself.
that's if they have public water in that
Yeah,
area.
and it was still. You're talking, that's quite a good sized building.
Well, lot. Yeah. Yep, that's a good sized building, and it's tempered by other buildings, other restrictions in here for certain uses that limit the size of the building, in some cases to 5,000 square feet. I'm not sure that should be building coverage. I may want to believe. No, that's building coverage. Yep, that could be a good sized building.
But as the town planner has said, even though you may be able to have a 16,000 square foot building, if you're going to be doing retail space, you're restricted to 5,000 square feet. You can't have a 16,000 foot building, not if it's retail. So there are other things that would end up restricting the size of the building. We would allow, if it were permissible use. For example, if it were a restaurant, you could conceivably have a 16,000 square foot restaurant.
Of course, you'll have no parking.
Yeah, parking would create a problem for you.
Well, no, but if that's the case, then can it be cut down to 50%? So that way you allow parking coverage.
Okay.
I'm just saying, you know.
If you need parking, but what if you don't need parking?
Yeah,
So how does that, and what is, what's net development density? I'm not sure what that means.
Could you identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, Linda Zoo. I apologize.
Thank you. Net development density is basically what it is as it's described. Is it described below? It's described in the definition. It's basically what you have to do is you take out the unsuitable soils and the unsuitable land on your property, and that's subtracted from your total acreage. So if you have it, let's say you have a lot, 60,000 square foot lot, 50,000 of it is wetland. It's really not a suitable lot for filling in. What it would be, you'd have to take out the, what you would do is you would take out the wetlands, subtract that. If you had unsuitable soils, it's basically steep slopes or wetland soils, those have to be subtracted from the density.
What about setbacks and stuff? Does that get subtracted?
Oh, it's not affected by that. What it affects is what your total density is for that property. So if you were doing a subdivision on a piece of land here, for instance, you would have to take off the amount of undevelopable soils from your density.
Right, so then if you take that, the undeveloped, and then so your, basically your lot size is just shrunk quite a bit, and then you want to take that down to 50%. Do you know what I'm saying? Is it the total lot size? Or is, I mean, because then once you go, if you take something and you've eliminated half of it as non-buildable,
Right.
so now you're only at 25%.
Right. Well, no,
So
it wouldn't
we're gonna be
affect it
careful
that
what-
way. You would probably, no, it would affect, in a situation like that, it's telling you what your density is. If you're doing multi-units in there, it's really going to affect the number of units that you can have. It really affects more residential than it's going to affect anything else, because it's a density calculation. So if you have one lot, let's say, you have 60,000 square foot lots, or 20,000 square foot lots. You have a 5-acre site out there. You can divide it into X number. In this case, it would be 10 lots. What it's going to do is, it would be a situation where you have, let's say, 2 acres of wetlands. Those would be subtracted, so instead of having 10 lots, you'd have, let's say, 8 lots. So it's actually a density calculation. You will be restricted, basically, on filling, let's say, a wetland situation. You'd be restricted on filling a wetland situation, basically, by our shoreline zoning, or more importantly, by DEP. Right now, DEP only lets you fill about 4,600 square feet of wetland without having to go to a higher tier permit, which you then have to go into wetlands bagging order. So it doesn't necessarily restrict how big your building has to be. What it does is it restricts more density.
Yes.
Donna McKinnon, when we had the comprehensive plan discussion, one of the things we talked about was small scale, medium scale, large scale with regards to buildings. For clarification purposes, since Townhouse Corner District specifies small scale, could you give the audience the numbers that apply to those words? Small scale, medium scale, large scale?
I believe small scale, we were talking about 5,000 square feet. 5 to
So
3,000 square feet.
the 16,000 square foot building that Bud referred to is automatically off the table because this is a small scale district.
Yeah. that
Then
would be-
perhaps this should say that.
Yeah, we'd have to define that a little bit better. I think building coverage, it should be building lot coverage. Because lot coverage, 80% of lot coverage is, we have some that are almost 100% lot coverage. But,
Well, it seems to me we're talking about two entirely different
yeah, so you're
things.
talking about two different.
And we're
Right.
covering it with the same phrase,
Right.
and maybe that needs to be clarified.
Yep. I think you're right.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Kastner. I live at 104 River Road. And first off, I'm quite surprised to see the expansive types of uses that are proposed here. And I go back 58 years on River Road, so I can remember any of what Tad has called the traditional uses that were on River Road, and I can think of Winks, Forefathers, more recently the boat place, and the details. But this area has not historically been a business area. Now you can look at the other side of Fenimore Court and say there's Orange Brown, but this is not London. London is residential. This is a lovely residential area. I don't see any need for this to continue all the way down to Meadowbrook Lane. I know Grange Hall has always been a topic of discussion, and what should that be, what should it look like? And I don't see any need for all of these residential areas to now be classified as possibly being drive-through facilities, boat launching facilities, low-impact manufacturing, and take-out restaurants. It is not compatible with this area. The character of this neighborhood does not withstand these type of uses that are proposed, and I think it's just way overly expansive and needs to be reconsidered.
Thank you. Does anybody else have? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. My name's Steve Monks. I own property on the Senate Road that abuts some of the proposed district. I have the same concern this lady behind me has as far as what's going in there. I already have two of the businesses on John Clough Road that abut my property that I've had no problems with. I've, had no disagreements when they decided to go in there, when it really wasn't it was basically residential zoning. And I figured some small business trying to make a buck, I didn't fight it. But as far as what's listed on this is permitted uses, I think is way, way over what that area should call for. Is going from residential to a commercial on a place that's already 90% residential doesn't make any sense in my mind. Where you have unused commercial property on Route 1 Alpha Road that's not being used, why are you putting it in an area that's already 90% residential? I have 3 children, 8 grandchildren. I'm hoping to keep this property in a family, expand, build, and this proposed John Clough Lane is going to be my backyard. My property value is going to go down as a residential, having commercial property in my backyard. And I just, you know, I don't see the need of it. I agree with her. Arundel is in a rural area. They broke away back in the 50s because they kind of wanted to separate from that area down where they had the tourism business. They were a farm community, and they wanted to keep it that way. And this here goes totally against the grain, what I thought Arundel should be. And I've been here for 28 years, and I plan on living there for the rest of my life, and hopefully my family too. And this here is just really disappointing to me to see that go in my backyard.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's John Fitzpatrick. I own property on 34 Arundel Road, which currently houses the Kennebunkport bicycle store, and then a residential building behind that. But I got a little confused because this woman mentioned about 6 businesses and then said there hasn't been many businesses there. They're there. Forefathers is a restaurant that was there. She's talking about not wanting a restaurant. There was a restaurant there. Of course, we know it's not a restaurant now, but it's been there. So in terms of historically what's happened there are businesses there now. There were businesses there before. There's a business in my building. Winks has his little key business. There's Winks the store. There's the boat place around the corner on Log Cabin. There's the detail business. I mean, we already have a lot of businesses. And these people are talking about historically we haven't had businesses. They already named some. And it would really, you know, Tad mentioned at the start of this that, but by the way, I'm not really talking about the specific area near your house. I mean, I'm just talking about this area has businesses and has always had, or for a long, long time, had businesses. So I think we you know, I don't think it was accurate what's been said so far in that regard. But the other thing is, you know, Tad mentioned about the fact that to take advantage of some of the traffic areas, there's a lot of cars going by down Log Cabin and down Arundel Road already. We're not talking about suddenly any businesses, whether they're there, because a lot of this traffic is not even going to any of these businesses. It's just, as we know, it's people going wherever they're going and using those roads to get them there. So I can't imagine, frankly, because the other thing is, not every single piece of land is going to be taken up by a business. So, and there's only X amount of pieces of land, period. So even if a few more businesses were added, besides what's already there, I can't believe we're talking about a huge increase in traffic from what already exists. So Tad said taking advantage of the traffic, and that's exactly what this would be doing. Taking an area that already gets a lot of traffic and making visible to them and making available to property owners businesses on that road, which helps the whole town. Tax base, helps people with the value of their property, etc. So that's one comment. I got very confused about that. I did want to make a few comments, if I could, about you know, the permitted uses and you know, some of the stipulations and so forth, if I could. First thing I wanted to mention was on page 3, it says facade materials. By the way, the other thing about the permitted uses, just before I go on that one page, there is 22 permitted uses here. That doesn't even mean there's going to be 22 businesses containing those things. You're just talking about businesses that you would allow there. This has almost no bearing on how many businesses will go in. So we can't confuse the list of business permitted uses with what's going to happen in the area. I think the permitted uses is very logical, very logical. But anyway, on facade materials, you know, it's a little bit restrictive considering what kind of facade materials are available these days. you know, not everything that's synthetic is ugly anymore. Besides T111, which I think still is. But, you know, there's some beautiful, beautiful new, and probably will be even more tomorrow type of thing. Beautiful facade materials, cement board, for example, that would really look great and can resemble clapboards and shingles, but really saves on wear and tear and maintenance for the property owner. So, on that alone, you know, I think it's a little overly restrictive, and you might want to consider some wording to the effect that would allow for what's available today in the market that looks really good. And if you wanted to make sure that some materials didn't get used that really don't look good, you know, no matter what they do to them. Again, not to use the T111 again, but I am.
We did, you might as well.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even know anybody still used it.
It's still available.
But, you know, maybe there can be some modifying that either if visible from the road or not visible from the road or a certain amount of feet back from the road. I don't know. But this is overly restrictive, I think, considering what great materials, synthetic materials, are out there now.
Just to point out,
Yeah.
if you look on page 2, it actually says it's limited to visible from the street.
Say that again?
These standards are limited to those structures that are visible from the street.
All right, where's that, Ted?
That's
Oh,
on
okay,
page
building
2.
design 1?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I also believe, Chad, that you did not revise that list from our previous meeting, because I believe we had excluded some of those, or allowed some of those that are now here.
Well, if you notice, it doesn't say what the material is. It doesn't say it's wood. It says clapboards,
No,
wood,
but-
and
We had taken out the vinyl and that's
Yeah,
gone.
the
There
vinyl
was
is
some-
gone from that.
Yeah, there was some question about aluminum and metal, and I'm not even sure we resolved.
But even vinyl, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't have to be a huge fan
It's
of it
okay
myself.
now.
What's that?
It's okay now.
Oh, it is permitted, I see, I see.
Yeah, we heard that the last.
Yeah. The next one I had a comment on was fences, railings, and steps.
Yeah, that's,
Particularly starting, I should say, with number 1, where it says fences, steps, and porches should reflect the architectural character, materials, and historic period of the principal structure. So that word materials, again, is a little bit, first of all, it's vague, and it could really put handcuffs on a property owner in terms of putting, again, very good material as for siding, but, you know, did they comply? Well, based on this wording, there's no way to even know. On number 2, I couldn't agree more, frankly, that, you know, the chain link fence is located within public view. I certainly would just like to voice support of the fact that anything that had chain link fences shouldn't even be visible from the road. But then number 3, all fences and railings manufactured without integral color should be either painted or stained. Why?
I think during our discussions, everybody was concerned about like pressure treated being enough to turn splintering.
But you could have cedar shingles
Yep. You could.
that are not.
Yep.
But
I think that was changed, frankly speaking. And this is the May 1st. I may have made a mistake printing this off.
Okay.
Because I think that had been changed by you
But anyway, the copy I have says it should be
Right.
painted as. Okay.
You're absolutely correct.
The next one I wanted to comment on was under signage and area and dimensions. And number 2, it says, or I should say it's number 1, shall not exceed 1 square foot of signage for every 2 linear feet of building or storefront frontage on a public street. My comment / question is that you've got linear feet of building or storefront. So which is it? I know, for example, I don't mean to speak for anybody here, but I know Winks, for example, has a building, but then they have business frontage, which is different than building business frontage that's different from building frontage. So, right there, I was just wondering if there's any thoughts on what the actual meaning
The meaning
is
of the
was.
storefront was if you had multiple uses within there, and usually what happens in many cases is difficulty within the building of a multi-use, a multi-tenant building. What we're trying to do is saying, if you have a storefront that's 25 feet, you can get your sign permit based on that storefront location, how much store frontage you have on the public street. That's the concept behind it. So instead of making the landlord sit there and play referee between all the various businesses, you say, you've got this much store frontage, you've got this much store frontage, and this is how much signage.
So really, it should say simply storefront,
It could, but then there's some uses that won't be store frontage.
but it says.
That's why it says building or store frontage.
So,
There's an aggregate number too, and there's different kinds of signs that are allowed.
Yeah,
And it gets hard for us sometimes.
Okay.
We've worked real hard trying to, for us to.
Say commercial building.
but anyway, I throw it out there because I'm
We'll
not
look at
sure,
it again.
I'm still not sure, Tad, whether, I get what you said, maybe there's, but why would someone have a huge sign across their building if they didn't have a business inside? So in other words, shouldn't it just say store frontage, storefront frontage?
The problem-
Business frontage then, I would put business frontage, because not everything's a store. A lot of the uses in here are not stores.
Yeah, what if you had a cabinet shop or a boat shop where you're just doing the construction, it's not a storefront, it's still a business.
But this says building, it doesn't say storefront. I mean, it doesn't say business front.
Right,
But
and I
anyway.
think we might change that to commercial building.
Okay, all right, good. Landscaping. That first paragraph under landscaping, I read it and I think I see sort of a, well, let me just explain what I'm talking about. It says, notwithstanding the standards specified in section 7.8 of this ordinance, new non-residential and mixed uses in the district shall conform. Shouldn't it say new structures? Because, for example, take my building with the Kennebunk Board bicycle store in it. He moves out. So there is a new use in that building, say. Well, that would then come under this, or is that the intent? Or shouldn't it be that, hey, if your building's there, if your structure's there, then the landscaping that's already there is all that's needed. But just because a business moves out, a new one moves in, and maybe a different business use, I've got to dig up 6 feet of pavement, parking pavement, and conform to landscaping? I hope not, but then again, I'm really throwing it out as a question. I wouldn't think that's your purpose, but I'm not sure.
It is not the purpose.
Should be grandfathered?
Yeah, if it's an existing structure, I'm thinking it should be grandfathered. So it sort of makes it sound like just a new use as opposed to a new structure.
Yeah, it is a structure.
Still excluding the residential, does not have that requirement.
Yeah, that's why it's restricted to non-residential mixed. Mixed being business on the first floor, residential on the second floor, business in front, residence in the back.
So it should be a new structure.
Yeah, basically it should be clear because it really kicks off on site plan, which is always triggered by structures or changes in site in terms of additional parking spaces or something structural on the site. That's what triggers this whole thing.
And I thought that's what your intent was, but I hope you can see that it's not quite clear. And that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan Du Bois, just a quick comment. Isn't the intent of ordinances to, over time, bring the standards up to what the ordinance is. I mean, I know we run into this before in the past on, your grandfather, but whenever a new business in any other place in town changes use, we make them conform to those standards, don't we? And that's the intent to bring everything up to speed to the current standards.
If they change the use, no. If they change the use within the conditional use pattern, if it's a change, substantial change of use that triggers a review, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
But if it's just a change of use, I'm going from a yarn shop to a breakfast shop. I don't have to make any changes as part of that unless I get triggered for a review of some sort. I'm going to expand 500 feet or do something like that. That's what triggers the review. We do it when we trigger a review.
When you trigger a review, they have to come in front of the planning board.
Or staff review.
So to me, that needs to be clear.
It's clear.
It's
It's
clear
a site
as mud.
plan.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
So if he's changing uses, he wouldn't have to, but if he pulled a building permit to do any work to that building, he would need to do that. He would need to conform to that.
Yeah, or if there was any reason you had a use that required a planning board review. If you went for conditional use, for instance. Or you're gonna expand your parking lot, or you're gonna build extra on the building.
But any changes would require him to then plant the trees.
Any changes that trigger a review by us. That's what it is.
Yes, Mike.
A question for you. Since a lot of this zone down there has been out of existence, basically anything that is going to be down there has to come through us.
Anything new, yes, because
And
anything.
what I'm going at is, for an example, okay? The example was forefathers.
Okay.
Okay, it was an existing use, but time has elapsed, okay? So now, if anybody's gonna do anything with forefathers, it has to come back under all the new changes and everything else?
Yes, they'd have to come back. Having the restaurant is permitted, but they would still have to meet the standards that are in this ordinance. Now, if forefathers were up and running right now, and somebody came along and said, we want to make 4 mothers, and we're going to take over the forefathers restaurant, they would not have to meet the conditions because it would already be an up and running business. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kim Monks. I live on the Senate Road with him. And my comment as far as the Forefathers Tavern had been there, yes, it was. But it was a happy day when it wasn't. Living on the Senate Road, you had noise, traffic, fights out in the parking lot, not really conducive to the neighborhood that we have. And it really wasn't. It was nice not to have it. Really would like to see it come back. As far as the traffic that's already going to that area, it's so heavy right now. The Senate Road, the way they drive on it, we have small children. You take your life in your hands on the Senate Road. Do I want to see more traffic on the Senate Road going up to businesses at the top of my road? No, I really don't. And as far as, even though there's 22 businesses listed here, which doesn't mean that all 22 are going to come, doesn't mean that they aren't going to come either. So, and is this already a done deal as far as, I mean, are we just here talking about it, or has this?
This has not been approved at town meeting.
Okay.
What was approved at town meeting was the comprehensive plan, I want to say concept, of having the townhouse corner district in that area. Comprehensive plan designated that area for the townhouse corner district. We're working up the regulations in the ordinance.
So they are the ones who picked this particular area?
Yes.
The town voted it in.
And the town voted it in back in June.
Well,
So that zoning change has been made already? Is that-
The zoning change is not. The comprehensive plan has been changed to recommend the creation of a townhouse corner district in the zoning ordinance. That's the basis of why the planning board is doing this. But the comp plan changed this. And quite frankly, to be fair to the comp plan committee, the planning board had recommended this along with the economic development committee, had made the recommendations that we proceed with this, and it was given to the comp plan committee to review the parameters of what the planning board and the economic development committee had recommended or were proposing. And then the comp plan committee reviewed that, and then they made their recommendations. And some of these things have been modified because of the comp plan.
That was done because there was a group of citizens from that area that came to us and said, we were discussing the, what we call the DB1 area on Route 1, and they came and said, hey, we'd like to have something like that down here in our area, which used to be a commercial area. I'll let the chairman of the comp plan address that issue.
Thank you. This is short, so I will read it for the benefit of those of you who have not seen the change in the comp plan that the town meeting voted for this June. Townhouse Corner District designation applies to the nexus of Arundel Road, Log Cabin Road, and Senate Road, known as Townhouse Corner. This district has historically been a mixed-use district and an important institutional and commercial crossroads. Uses. The Townhouse Corner District will permit small-scale retail, office, service, and community uses, as well as single and multifamily dwellings. Mixed-use projects will also be permitted. Development standards. New construction shall be designed to reflect the character of the surrounding residential neighborhoods, with significant reduction in lot sizes, lot frontages, and setbacks. A pedestrian-oriented approach to development will be applied where feasible. New residential subdivisions, as defined by state statute, will be excluded. And yes, the chair of the planning board is correct. We did this kind of backwards. Usually the comprehensive plan comes up with suggestions, and the planning board then executes those things after the fact. They came to us and said, how about this, in response to some public requests, and we worked from there. So this has had actually a great deal of public input beyond what's happening tonight. The comprehensive plan committee, as we worked on this and the other things that we worked on, made an effort to respect as much as humanly possible private property rights and the decisions that property owners could make about their own property. Not to be terribly redundant there. What the planning board does with it in terms of the specifics is really what's being discussed tonight. And that part has not been approved yet.
You have a comment?
Yes, I share Mr. Monk's concerns. The two largest parcels that come back towards Senate Road look like they're going to be a problem. All right? The one that actually fronts Senate Road, what's going to prevent that person from opening a business that faces Senate Road? Anything? Or does that become a commercial property now on Senate Road? I have no problem with using the frontage along Log Cabin Road, but it seems like you made no depth provisions as to how far back these businesses will be allowed to go in.
That whole lot that goes back to Senate Road would be allowed to have a business, and then there's the setbacks that are required and the landscaping that's required from the surrounding properties. The board, the planning board, although it does not, because this is the only lot that does touch it, there's one in the corner, but the planning board doesn't have any requirement that there not be an access onto Senate Road. There's most likely, and I speak theoretically, that the planning board would pretty much not be pleased to have access, depending on the nature of the use, not to have access from Senate Road, but in fact, keep the access along Log Cabin Road.
I understand. I can see that that's the intent there, but the reality that what would you do to prevent that? I don't see that you could do anything to prevent that.
That's wet.
I'm sorry?
That's wet.
On Senate Road.
Yeah. That piece is wet.
That doesn't mean you can't use it.
It's so no, there is no specific
So then what that entails, that starts bringing the commercial districts like that onto Senate Road, changing the character of Senate Road.
If it were to access on there, I would agree with you.
And I agree with Mrs. Monks about the traffic problem on Center Road. I walk that road every day. I have people going by me at 55 miles an hour.
So this additional townhouse corner that we're speaking of, this dark shaded area, is that been decided already, or is that something that, you know, we're talking frontage on Log Cabin Road. Now they're coming in, well, they're probably talking 2,000 feet in off of Log Cabin Road.
Rose
That
Warehouse.
abuts my property that has nothing to do with Log Cabin Road frontage and traffic. It's, you know,
The way it was presented to the board and that public, if I might speak, Mr. Chairman, the people on John Bluff and those groups that live behind it have two businesses, or two of those lots already have businesses on them.
correct.
They had the other one that, they happened to be the further ones, so they would like to have been included in it, in order to include them, we went up.
That has nothing to do with the concept of townhouse district, when you're coming in 2,000, 2,500 feet off Log Cabin Road in my eyes. They just, it's good, you know, I don't understand that, with this whole business district is, you know, that the existing, this would never exist in business. They had a garage here, Mr. Richard Lovejoy, when I bought the property, and the Thibodeau Landscaping moved in probably 5, 6 years ago. And it's a garage, and there's no business, it's a storage garage. They keep their equipment there. I mean, it is a business per se, but not what.
Yeah, just as to your initial comment, has this been decided? No, this is what we're talking about. The only thing that's been decided is what Donna just read to you, which is the comprehensive plan. That's the only thing that's been decided. All of this is just proposed, and that's what we're talking about.
Well, I know we're talking proposed, but everybody's talking irrelevant things about types of material. Shouldn't we have this proposal go through before we start worrying about
No,
those things? No.
this is all the ordinance that would control that district. It controls not just the businesses, but the kinds of materials, the kinds of things that can actually go on down in that area, all of which have to get addressed as part of the ordinance. If we were to go through and take just the first section and say, here are these 22 businesses, you can do these down in that area without giving some kind of a design standard or some kind of signage capability, we'd have chaos down there.
I know, I understand that, but I think the details like that should be after the fact, that when you pick the area, then, you know, go through that detail afterwards.
If we did it after the fact, it would be too late, because we would say, you can do all of these things, and somebody would jump in and create something that nobody likes, and we wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because there'd be no control over what the ordinance looked like, or what kind of structure you were supposed to have. Somebody could go down there, if we didn't have design standards, somebody could put up a Quonset hut and scatter pink flamingos all over the front yard going, I sell pink flamingos. And everybody would get their knickers in a twist at that point.
That'd be like pink flamingos.
I have a lady in a yellow hat.
John Burroughs, I have a substantial interest in this because I do own this. I believe tonight I'm the youngest person here in the room that has the property out there. I have not figured out how to stop change. It happens. I am also one of the biggest advocates in the area as far as making sure that our residents are not squeezed out. Spending a lot of time on the EDC with the Comprehensive Planning Board. If you take a look at all the lots that are marked on this area, the setbacks that have been proposed, there's not a lot of change for any huge development. We did not want to have that whole residential feeling lost. As a business owner, if from the EDC perspective, if you start from Log Cabin Road, there are quite a few businesses that are already running there. We start with Houston and Company, we have the House on Tree Farm,
we go to, you said, John, you know, the Clough Lane, where there's Thibodeau Landscaping, even though it's just a garage, it is a commercial business. And Richard Lovejoy, and then we have the boat building yard. We have details. There's also the Forefathers lot. There's Sinclair property. Then you come to Winks. Then you go through Arundel Range, which now has the bicycle shop in it. So these are already existing businesses that are happening in your neighborhood. From a business owner standpoint of view, by changing this all to residential, our hands are tied when it comes to financing. Because we are not in a business zone. So, if I want to go and maintain my building, I want to make the upkeep, and I want to keep your neighborhood looking nice, I cannot do this as a business loan. My options are to turn Winks into an apartment building. I personally would like to get a business loan so that I can maintain the structure of the building, have it look nice in the neighborhood. And we put a lot of effort into making sure that there's no drive-through businesses coming through, and that the structures have to be conforming and have to go in front of the planning board in order to maintain a rural area of use.
The drive-through facility was under conditional use, right? So it could indeed come into the area.
It's conditional, though. It has to go before a public hearing, it has to go through planning board.
But it still doesn't mean that it won't happen.
Nothing's impossible. You
That's
can go in front
true.
of the town for anything. Absolutely.
That's when we get together as residents and voice and say that we don't want it.
But the two concerns, though, as this gentleman was saying, why,
That's the Forefathers.
yes, I know, but it has frontage on the Senate Road. It could potentially be
It could go up
accessed,
Senate
depending
Road
on what
and
it
take a
is,
road
from the
from
Senate Road. So we're now going to have a business on the Senate Road, number one. And number two, for the John Clough Lane, granted, those two businesses are there, but they are not businesses that really impact our lives, because they are just storage. But now if they put a restaurant down there, or they put a bar down there, or whatever they put down there, and now we have traffic in and out, and people, and things going on all the time, two totally different scenarios. So at least in that lot, if it was confined to the front part, the Log Cabin Road, and it's not going to impact us as much as if some business comes all the way down, like it says 2,000 feet in, right behind our houses, and we have to live with that all the time. And is it possible to have something that says that that other lot cannot have access from the Senate Road, that it does have to access from Log Cabin Road if indeed something is going on that lot? Because the Senate Road just couldn't, it just couldn't handle that. It couldn't. It's crazy now. It could not handle access to a business off of the Senate Road. It would just be crazy. So I don't know if there's any way to
Yeah, there are ways that
There are
can
ways
be
of-
restricted, yeah.
do something like that.
There are definite ways to ameliorate that kind of a situation.
I think it would depend on the situation. I don't want to, I'm the owner of that property. I don't want to limit myself by saying that, because I don't know what's on the road, I honestly don't. But I can't imagine there would be anything that would impact traffic on the Senate Road more than Franmore Campground. I mean, you've got a campground on there, and as far as noise and stuff goes, I can hear the music from my house. So,
From Franmore
not that
Campground?
I mean, is it Franmore? What?
Red Apple.
Oh, sorry. I'm just, there's a lot of traffic coming in on the Senate Road too. I don't understand, I mean, that one little piece of property, I don't think is gonna affect the Senate Road in such a way that.
It depends on what goes on that piece of property. I mean, the traffic is heavy
Well,
on the
when
Senate
something
Road
is
now, but
proposed, then it can be addressed at that time. And if it's something that's gonna be high traffic and you don't want it coming out through Senate Road, then it can be discussed then.
I just don't feel the Senate Road is a business.
It does have businesses on it as
This-
well.
So this is why we're having this hearing, to, you know, get all that input.
But can I just mention before, one more thing, we are, tell me if I'm wrong, I mean, this is, the townhouse corner is going to vote, that's not a question at this point, it's what is in the land use ordinance that we're discussing at this point. We've already had these discussions, and the comprehensive plan has been approved. So now we're having a workshop to decide just the types of stuff that Jim was talking about, you know, John, sorry. I don't know why we're sort of like pedaling backwards right now. I thought we were supposed to be discussing what was going to be allowed and what wasn't.
Jeff,
Marty?
one thing that most of us realize that don't realize, okay, there is a small section along the Senate Road, okay, that isn't even in Arundel, okay, unfortunately, but I'm not knowing what the requirements are from Kennebunk Court. They may turn around and be able to turn around and do something totally against what we're trying to stop or save along the way.
Yes, sir. Yeah, my name is Scott Dombrowski, and I have a question specific to accessory apartments. And I'm trying to determine, under the permitted uses, there's item number 2 that says single-family residence, detached, and duplexes. And I didn't know how to interpret detached, and specifically what I mean is what I was looking at considering would be putting up a 2-car garage in place of the 1-car garage I have, and having an apartment overhead. And wanted to know, is that something that is permitted?
It's got to be in the main object. Yeah, you could do that as, well, let me do that as a duplex.
The duplex are allowed to.
Duplex, but it's, I mean, they're not connected. So you've got 2 separate buildings.
Oh, you're doing separate buildings?
Yeah, I mean, you know how people build a garage and they'll have, you know, they'll have an apartment or live upstairs or something
But it's
like
not
that.
attached to the main house.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have to be,
I mean, why wouldn't you allow something
Yeah,
like that?
why wouldn't?
That's, but then I looked on the next page, and when it's set like and I don't know, would a garage be considered an accessory building?
garage would, but the apartment, the accessory apartment, I understand the accessory apartment is a mother-in-law apartment, essentially has to be within the main body of the building, it's limited to about 500 square feet. So it's a very small apartment, and it's actually within the main body of the building.
Okay,
If you have an attached garage, you can get away with it. If you have a detached garage,
what's
you
the
don't meet
problem?
that standard. Well, it doesn't meet the standard. It doesn't meet the standard, which is it's got to be within the main building.
What's the standard?
That's the standard. That's existing standard.
It would be an additional dwelling unit, right?
There's
It's not
well,
called
does
an
you
in-law
have-
apartment,
you
it's
have
called an
like
apartment.
I don't think that's allowed today.
I don't think it, when I looked into it a couple of years ago, it wasn't allowed. But if a separate building, if the garage is a separate building, an accessory building, the height restriction is 15 feet, which wouldn't be tall enough to be able to put an apartment above.
In the current ordinance, if he has property of 1.5, you would have to have 1.5 times the current, whatever zone you're in, plus 1.5 acres to put in an additional building.
Right.
Structure. So if you had that, it's another one of the things that are in there. So if you happen to have enough property,
Probably not. I got a one-car
then
garage
it
now.
could be
that I'll
allowed by
take
the
down and
current
put up a
ordinance.
two. So it's a one-car detached garage on the property now, and it's just too small for the needs. I'd like to put up a 2-car, and, you know, as my parents get older, that kind of thing, I'd like to be able to have someplace that...
There's a second car garage, the second half of that, is it going to be attached to the house?
No, be detached.
If it's attached to the house,
Yeah, the one's detached now.
no,
And this
the
would-
future.
Yeah,
When you put the second part to it, to add the second car, make it a 2-car garage,
Mhm.
is that gonna be attached to the house?
well, I mean, it could be. I think it would look worse, to be honest with you. I think the property looked better if they had 2 separate buildings on it.
I had to attach mine, so.
So just
That's why I know the other rule. That's it.
That's what a duplex is, it's attached. It's 2 dwelling units in the same building. So,
Even by
that's
a
how you'd have
breezeway?
to do it, yeah.
Even by a breezeway?
So isn't this a good time to consider doing it the other way? And allowing that? Why not? I mean, geez, that's pretty common. In most towns you look at, you can do that.
Yeah, Scott, the only
Yeah.
problem is, we're north, down south, they do it all the time. We have white rain up here.
Yeah, it's something to consider.
It's definitely
We'll-
something
we'll
we can
talk.
look at and consider. Milda?
So just to be clear, what has been passed is the direction to the comprehensive plan committee based on this part of the comp plan now that says uses. Townhouse corner district, this is what Donna read, will permit small-scale retail, office, service, and community uses, as well as single and multifamily dwellings. Mixed-use projects will also be permitted. That's all that's in stone at this point, having recently been passed.
That is correct.
The actual delineation of the zone and the details that you have laid out in this proposal are still up for discussion, correct?
Yes.
Yes, right, that's what we have in this meeting.
So if the planning board feels that number 19, a restaurant, fits as a small-scale retail, office, service, and community use, then that would be consistent with what the comprehensive plan charge is. And I think that the comments tonight need to be directed at whether this list of 22 permitted uses and the 13 conditional uses fit in that very short purpose or use as has been passed. And I'm saying I can see under 19 restaurants, we get Bentley's too, Bentley's East in our neighborhood. And I don't know whether the small scale limitation would prevent that kind of thing.
But the fact that they are a tavern would prevent that.
Wait, do they
Can I answer that?
Yes, Jen?
Just to shed light on that as far as why when we were suggesting restaurants. Due to state Maine law, there are different licensing permits for each venue. You could have a small scale restaurant which only has 10 seats. If they have a certain amount of equipment, say a breakfast area or something, not a Bentley's, not a bar or a booth. If they go to get a Maine restaurant license, that's what they have to do. Right now, as a convenience store, I am grandfathered as a convenience store. I cannot change my license to a deli, which would allow me to not have to sell alcohol, not sell cigarettes, and could lower the scale. I cannot do that because I'm only grandfathered as a convenience store. So the reasoning that we suggested the restaurant is there was a small scale business that wanted to go in, which this group can decide how many seats, they can decide, hours of operation, etc. But we didn't want to limit the opportunity for someone to have a restaurant.
My name's John Bell. I think it was the intent of the comprehensive plan committee to rezone this area as a mixed-use zone so that businesses could be allowed down there. But at the same time, we tried to keep the impact of any businesses that were allowed to an absolute minimum so as to not interfere with the partially residential character of the area. I think the situation down there right now, you can look at R.H. Brown, which is right across the street from this area, and there is nothing that could be built under this proposal that would have anywhere near the impact of R.H. Brown. So I think there's enough business activity down there right now that we need to allow some sort of business use in certain properties. I don't think under this proposal you're going to see, operations like Bentley's or huge restaurants or drive-through facilities. We tried to keep it as restricted as possible, and I would just like people to kind of keep that in mind.
I'd like to know, the uses, this is the sticky stuff, and let's talk about that, because the devil is in the details.
Could have mail-order businesses.
And so I guess the question I would ask is, all right, let's go around the table here. What in here, what in this list do you feel is really out of whack with the character of that particular area, both in scale or in intensity of use? What is the greatest danger in these lists that you folks see? That's why we're here.
Okay, conditional use number 6, low impact manufacturing. What does that mean?
That's a 6,000 square foot facility limited to no greater than 6,000 square foot, in which they
6,000 square foot per lot. So if I look at John Cliff Lane, I can put 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
I can have them all in each lot. That'd be pretty large scale manufacturing business.
If you had that many, 1, 2, 3 like that, yeah, you probably
Yeah.
could.
So what's going to prevent that?
It's not. It's
Exactly.
a low impact, it's a conditional use, and has low impact, it has significant buffering setbacks from property lines, and the types of uses in low impact manufacturing are going to be limited too. But it's, as we said, low impact. No outdoor storage of materials, number of different, I would say, in fact, a boat building facility would probably be a low impact facility. Is that what you were going to say?
I was just going to say, there's
Okay.
already one
Thank
there.
you.
There's already a facility, and there's also, Bill Houston's place, I think it's low impact manufacturing, correct?
I'm just looking at ways people can get around the ordinance.
And it's a good thing you do, because that's what they will spend their time doing.
Exactly.
Any property owner is going to want to maximize their property to get the best return they can, whether it's return of quality of life, your residence, your home, your castle, or if it's your business, you want to get the best return you can. I bought this piece of land, I want to use it to the best benefit of what I'm trying to do here. I don't want to hurt my neighbors. Nobody goes out to hurt their neighbors, really, unless the people around the town. But you want to try to get along, be fair to your neighbors and still do the best you can. And you're gonna interpret, go as far as you possibly can. Anybody can go as far as they can go in this. So going through this exercise is important, and I agree. You should throw this out. So
Yeah.
let's keep going.
That's where we get scaling back from the road.
Let me read you what the definition in our ordinance is of low impact manufacturing.
The proposed new one?
No, this is in the ordinance right now.
The new one's more research.
Establishments engaged in the manufacturing, assembly, research, or processing of products and goods with all the operations occurring entirely within an enclosed structure not exceeding 5,000 square feet, producing no objectionable noise, glare, odor, vibration, smoke, or dust associated with the operations detectable outside the building. If you can detect it outside the building, they're in violation of the ordinance. The CEO can go down and tell them to cease and desist.
What about anything toxic?
I'm sorry.
What about anything toxic? I'm concerned about my well.
Heavy metals used in processes, leaking, toxicities.
That's why it's a conditional use. They would have to go through a review of what they use, how they store it, how they protect it. This board has done it. We did this with J Board.
We just said.
Same sort of thing. What are your chemicals? What's your MSDS sheets? What are you going to be carrying on here? What are you going to be doing? What are you doing with your waste materials? How are you storing it? How quickly or how often are they being picked up? Those are the reviews these guys do. That's their responsibility.
And how do you know they comply with all those things once you go through these reviews?
What you do is you do your inspection the first time when you get your CO, and after that,
They're pretty much on their own.
Yes,
They do
they
what
are.
they want
Yeah.
to do. Yeah.
From one standpoint, the standpoint being that if there's any violation of their permit that we become aware of and can prove, then the town does in fact do enforcement. But do we go in every business, every 30 days and inspect it? No.
It's no different than a landowner changing their oil in the car and dumping their oil in their backyard.
I understand, except for scale. Scale can change with.
But this board goes through an exhaustive process of.
The exhaustive process is only on the front end, and then it becomes a litigation problem to deal with it later on should things start going wrong. Now the town has to assume getting rid of those problems. That's why I'm kind of looking at it going, well, you know, the boat business, fine, that's small, we know what that's in sight, you know what's going on there. You start going way back, it starts getting more questionable. You know, it's the depth.
That's 2014, and businesses are not left to their own, you know, that nobody's gonna be, can.
I work for the federal government, I know all about what goes on.
OSHA and DEP is not gonna allow anybody that manufactures anything to dump any chemicals or
I
anything.
work for the federal government, I know what goes on.
What's commercial services number 17? That seems kind of wrong.
It is broken.
This whole neighborhood, the townhouse corner. And now, this whole zone is, you're calling it townhouse corner, now we're talking commercial, industrial. If you're gonna have townhouse, I have no objection to any small businesses that are there, or any other one that wanna come in. But going from, small business to commercial is, I think, is out of hand for that area. Small boat, the Winks, the bike shop, they're all low impact.
They're all commercial uses.
I know, but you gotta be more specific on what's gonna go in there. You know, you can't just say 5,000 feet commercial. You know, I don't understand how.
This is the definition for commercial use. The use of lands, buildings, or structures other than a home occupation, the intent and result of which activity is the production of income from the buying and selling of goods or services exclusive of the rental of residential buildings and or dwelling units. You're selling stuff. You're buying and selling stuff.
I mean, it's too vague. I don't know what the answer is, but.
Well, actually, we have a better definition, and I did not bring the new definition section. Well, we have a new definition of commercial services. Well, it's not approved, but it's proposed. This isn't approved either.
I'm at the risk of being redundant, because John Bell made a shot at this before. I'm going to give it another shot. And this is something that the Comp Plan Committee discussed at length. Think in terms of 3 categories instead of 2. There's residential, there's business/commercial, and think of those as synonyms. And then there's mixed use, which lies in the middle. Now, there are very few areas in town, as a result of home occupations and the agricultural history we have, that don't have some businesses mixed in with the residential uses at the moment. For the most part, we ignore them because they're our neighbors and we like those people and they just do their thing. At the other end of the scale, there's the business commercial. Now we're looking at the business industrial area at the north end of Route 1, or any concentration of, and larger business that you can think of, VIP. I'll throw that one out because that's easy and obvious. The mixed use, and this is what we spent a great deal of time defining when we worked on the comp plan revisions. The mixed use is intended to be small scale, neighbor friendly, because it's exactly that. It's mixed use. It's the existing businesses, and I'll stick with Townhouse Corner now, such as Winks that have been there for a long time, or new small-scale businesses like Houston that come in relatively new. But they become a part of the neighborhood, and neighborhood was the word we worked with. It didn't show up in the comp plan as a term, but that's what we were focusing on. Arundel really is a collection of neighborhoods. My neighborhood is different than your neighborhood. And I have just as much a fight in me to protect your neighborhood as I do to protect my own. That's what being a member of this community at large is all about. So if you think of Townhouse Corner as a neighborhood, and this is what I would hope the planning board will do when they finalize this language, and what's permitted and what's not. If you think of Townhouse Corner as a neighborhood, what's compatible with that neighborhood? And what is fair to all of the neighbors in the neighborhood? Part of the reason, and I was at one of the original workshops for the Townhouse Corner district, part of the reason for this is what Jen alluded to before. As a business in a residential area, she is, and other businesses are as well, stuck when it comes to financing. As soon as this becomes mixed use, which has the business piece included, that changes that picture for those businesses. And that's fair to those neighbors in that neighborhood. The residential neighbors in the neighborhood also need to have fairness thrown their way. They don't need additional dust, traffic, noise, toxic materials, or anything else that impacts their life or their property. So somewhere in this, there's a happy medium. Now, scale has a lot to do with it. As I look down this list, okay, lodging including boarding houses. Well, if we're going to put in some huge hotel, that's not going to fit in that neighborhood. But if you had a bed and breakfast with, 3 bedrooms, to visit during the summer months primarily, would you notice? Maybe not. So scale as well as specific use are two of the important pieces of this, and that was the intention of the language in the comprehensive plan. Now, if the planning board comes up with some things in this that don't reflect that intent, you are not the only people who will make us think about it. The comprehensive plan committee is not going to be happy either, because it wasn't the intent, and it wasn't what we proposed to the town. And as far as my committee is concerned, our reputation as committee members is on the line if what gets put into practice is not what was intended when we presented our proposal. So there's an awful lot of shared responsibility here that has to be considered. And the word neighborhood should be in everybody's mind and the first one to throw out as this discussion proceeds.
Can I ask, so does that mean that the word small scale, make it so lodging including boarding houses, does that make it just a bed and breakfast? Is that what Rick says?
We will have to define small scale. We don't have it defined.
Not for lodging.
There's a lot of
allowed in this district.
There's a lot of things that define how big a structure can be. So,
Boarding houses are already allowed down there, so
but
we
you
wouldn't be
can't,
able
you
to
can't
say
build a
no.
big hotel by what you've already written. But anyway, I just wanted to say one thing. John touched on something that I think shouldn't get lost in this whole discussion. What's been created here has the opportunity to allow for some very good-looking commercial operations. As he said, using R.H. Brown as an example, it's not going to happen. It can't happen.
I agree.
It can't. So what shouldn't get lost is the opportunity to create some really nice, to this woman's reference to structures that can look like a home. That's what you've drawn up here. You've drawn up stuff that allows for good-looking buildings, and materials, and sizes only. Now, the other thing is, I think we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater here. Speeding on Sinnott Road is not going to change. In other words, if you're speeding, if there's cars humming down there now, they're going to hum down there 10 years from now too. I don't know how to solve that.
That is true.
But you know, in cars whiz down Arundel Road and whiz down River Road. Cars are flying all over the place. I get that. I agree. But this is not what's created that. And this, allowing this or not allowing this, is not going to change that. The other
No,
thing
it
I
could
heard,
slow things down.
the other, shotguns would probably slow it down, but I'm not proposing that. But, so, and I don't know about John Clough Lane. I understand the concerns I've heard here tonight. I really don't know the property, but I get the concerns. But again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater would be not allowing for what you've drawn up here in terms of the potential for some really good-looking new structures that are small businesses and that could really both improve the area and, help the town and improve the area.
I'd like to thank all of you for having come out tonight. We're going to have to call this meeting, this hearing to an end. We've got a little bit of business to finish up, and then we're supposed to be done by 9 o'clock. Are we not?
Yes.
This is my understanding. So I have time for one more comment.
As I go away from this, am I leaving, having you folks consider putting an accessory apartment as a separate building? I heard somebody say we can consider that, but it's kind of important.
It's all on the list of things that we will give consideration.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you all
Mr.
for
Chairman.
your time. All right.
If anybody hasn't put in their email address to be,
Oh, yeah. If you would like to receive notices of when we're having these meetings, you can, if you go to the town website, on the very front page, and I found it today, because the town clerk was kind enough to say, you didn't tell me you wanted the email. So I went in and I clicked off to get all of the emails for the various things that go on in town. They'll be sure to send you the email. I didn't even know about the meeting last night.
In other words,
I wasn't on the list.
if you wanted to be notified of all future meetings, go to the town website, sign up your email, and you'll get all that.
And I would like to make one quick comment. I'm hoping, from a selectman standpoint to the planning board, that this is not the last meeting that we're going to have on the Townhouse Corner District. You know, they've got some work to do, and I would tend to hope that we call another meeting together with all of you folks to make sure that we have everything all in.
Sign up when we post our agenda. If we are discussing the Townhouse Corner District, it will be listed on the agenda, and we would love to have you come down. This has been a very good session, so thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
that's also far and away.
This is the stuff.
It's
I said, me and Paul, I'm still waiting, I gave you home.
Paul will lend it to me.
Yeah.
He's got 11.4 cents in his pocket.
They don't watch the road, they go my living room. Thank you though very much.
I know, you know.
Okay, let's keep this meeting rolling. Okay, bylaw revisions.
There's no
Bylaw Cornish is the next item that we should look at. The bylaw revisions that we had.
Yes, please. Let's get this done.
Nothing but mail on a businesses.
Hey, folks.
Then, no problem.
I'm gonna get one. I'm gonna get
In
one.
the box.
Okay. Okay. On to bigger and better things, or not so big, or not so better, nonetheless. We have the bylaws that we had discussed. I'm assuming that I can find where they were.
did not bring additional changes.
Do not have. Why not? Okay. Yeah, I don't remember having
And
seen
send it
that.
out to you. Came with, you also have minutes which describe those changes as well.
Right, we were replacing existing item C with a majority vote. All action taken by a majority vote at any meeting in which there is a quorum. I'm afraid we may have to put this off until the next meeting. 'Cause I can't.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I don't have them. So I'm gonna table this until the next meeting, so that we can gather all of those back together. And I'll see if I can't get Ann to resend them to everybody. Okay?
We don't need minutes, we just need the final verbiage.
Right, we need the final verbiage, so that we can vote on what it is that we were saying.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
What is a piece of paper is this?
I've got stuff going back to April, and I don't have it.
Good.
Okay.
Is what you are discussing what Ron sent you?
No, because we made changes to that afterwards.
Okay, I was just curious.
And so,
And we had gone through and we had come up with the final verbiage, and none of us have it here.
Google Minutes.
Okay, so
We'll
next,
have Ann resend it to you.
next step will be the approval of minutes. We'll start with April 10th, Kate Sputter's sidewalk. And Roger, Marty, and I,
I'll make a motion, we accept them as written.
Yeah.
okay, motion's been made and seconded, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously.
I'm abstaining. as
Two
well.
abstentions.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, that's two abstentions because they weren't here. Sorry
Well,
about
I
that.
was there, but.
Not only that, they.
Well, you weren't there as a board rep. May 8th.
It was Kate's. Yeah, that's the case.
Oh, that-
And that was April.
No, April 10th was May, was Kate's.
That was Kate's sidewalk. April 10th was Kate's sidewalk.
Yes, I'm sorry.
May 8th was here at MLD. Tom was here, Marty was here, Bob was here, Roger was here, and Jamie was here. So we have 3 people present out of the 5 that were there.
Over 7 times, I didn't see anything wrong, so I'll make a motion, we accept them as written.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? 3 in favor, 2 abstentions. John and I were not at that meeting. We then move on to June 12th, the Lovejoy sidewalk.
Well, as the quarter, I'll make a motion that we accept.
Accept your own minutes.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously,
Abstention.
with 4 and 1 abstention.
The one thing I didn't, and it doesn't have to be included anywhere, these are, but just for a note for the planner, we went out on this at the behest of these folks, found the condition. I think if we went back to our old site walk that we did when they first started the plan, it would have been all of these same kind of Same kind of, except this time some of the markings on the property wasn't even there.
Right.
So we need to, before we do anything with it, we need to do some work.
Yeah, I think we told them at that.
I wasn't at that meeting.
Yeah.
No, that's why you abstained from the voting. So I have no.
But I'm just saying, in the future, if they come in and wanna get on the agenda, they need to show you something.
Right.
Yeah, I will address that during
If you look at the June 12th minutes
Okay.
in the June 12th meeting, we pretty much said everything that had to be done there.
Yep,
We should have never even gone on that sidewalk.
because it wasn't any place supposed to be.
Like Bob said, it's deja vu all over again, but it's worse.
And last but not least,
June 12th minutes.
You just did June 12th.
no, we did the Lovejoy sidewalk.
That was June 12th?
That was June 12th.
Lovejoy, sorry.
Right, the next item on here is the July 10th, last meeting.
We have the June
Did we do-
26th.
When we get June 12th,
We've got I've got June 12th, June 26th, and July 10th, but on the agenda, we only have July 10th.
so we probably already
So I
did.
think we've already done the other ones.
Yeah. That's why I have a whole bunch of, in case you don't have the 26th.
The July 10th, we have it done, right?
We're looking at June 26th.
Which is that was the, does everybody have a copy of the 26th? Because I made extra copies.
No, I'm sorry, it was approved. It was approved at the July 10th meeting.
What, it's 26th?
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
My mistake.
So we have the July 10th meeting that we need to approve. We did the 22nd to 12th and the 26th 2 weeks ago.
So we've got just the July 10th meeting, or July
Yeah, July 10th.
10th meeting.
And all of us were there.
Move to approve.
Motion's been made, is there a second?
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion, anything to change? Hearing nothing, all those in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
So all minutes are done.
All minutes are done, we are covered. Is there a planner's report?
There's a small planners report, right? It's regarding the Lovejoy subdivision. And that subdivision will be on hold for a while. I regret to inform you that John Toothaker, who is, you all know, who made the presentation to us, has died.
Oh, I heard that.
Unexpectedly of a massive coronary, from my understanding.
I wouldn't have brought that up.
So, he will not be, obviously, Mr. Lovejoy has to find an alternative, and he's out searching for another suitable designer. Our condolences go out to the Toothaker family, and we will probably not be seeing this for a little while. In other matters, I would say that I don't have really much to report right now. We probably all heard about what happened last night. Once again, the TIF district, for those of you who don't know, the seasonal cottage TIF district had to go back to town meeting last night. We had that public hearing and a town meeting on it because the Journal Tribune did not print the public notice that was mandated by the state at the town meeting, the June 12th town meeting. And even though we made a pitch to our attorneys saying that the Arrow actually had their circulation of the Rumble than the Journal, which is true because it goes in every mailbox in Arundel, the state and our attorneys said that did not meet the letter of the law. So consequently, we had to have the meeting, and again last night, although there was some opposition, it did pass. So
Great turnout.
it was a what, 46 million, 40, was it 25 or 46?
I was gonna
No.
go and I.
According to the website, it was voted 24-2.
Yeah. 42,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, 26, okay. So there we go. So that's back on. Other issues that are going on right now, I am currently just working on the zoning ordinance and the framework of the zoning ordinance. We have a meeting coming up with the town, the comprehensive planning committee. That is coming up, next Tuesday. And they are going to be tackling the issue, once again, of the rural overlay zone and the issue of lot size versus uses, or basically an inverse relationship or actually a proportional relationship as lot sizes increase, the number of different types of uses that can occur on that increases. That will be just a topic of discussion at the comprehensive committee meeting. The planning board may want to start getting involved in some of this, and at least listen in on some of these issues. As I believe I said at the last meeting, the comp plan committee is going to be focusing on the residential districts and on some of the thorny issues. Probably the biggest thorny issue is what do we do with R4, what do we do with NRC, and what do we do with our scenic overlay district, and plus a number of other issues. I think they're also going to be discussing whether or not we're finished with all our commercial districts in the town, or mixed-use districts in the town.
Also possible discussion of combining some of the, there's our 4 and our 3, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's a question.
They're so darn close, our 4 and our 3, when you look at the uses, it's like, why? So
I think the separation difference was just simple uses, one of which was gravel pits, quite frankly. So that's one issue that they're going to be really tackling, and I think the board might want to be participants in that particular issue. On another note, I think we're going to have to take a look at shoreline zoning again. Reason being that shoreline zoning changed again, it became again a little less restrictive. Plus, on top of that, Bud LaGrosse basically submitted a new mapping of his area. I know that the board has been concerned about this because there were some questions as to where that famous blob around Brimstone Pond came from, and we've traced it back to the state, guys, okay? They keep disavowing any knowledge of it, but it goes back to them. It had nothing to do with their yards. It had to do with the National Wetlands inventory mapping of his property. I've gotten a revised map from Al Frick. My intent is to take Mike Morris out there and do an assessment of Al's work. Unfortunately, only deals with Bud's land, and this wetland complex goes off-site from Bud's land, so it's a big guess after that, or else I'm going to have to do the interpretation myself from the aerials and from ground truthing as well. But I want to get the state involved in this and get their blessings, especially in regards to what constitutes wading bird habitat of significance, because I'm not sure this qualifies. Some of it may, some of it may not. I need some better information from the state. So I'm going to forge ahead with that. I assume that the board has no problems with me doing that. Getting in touch with the shoreline zoning unit and going out there in the field if I can pry them away from their desks to investigate this. But at the same time, we have some we have some standards in our existing shoreline zoning that the question is, do you want to reevaluate? One of which is IFW has given us a new deer yard map. And quite frankly, right now, you have deer yards as one of the criteria for your resource protection district. These are areas that have not been in the shoreline zoning and would be under our current zoning criteria. The question is that what you want to do? I think we need to look at and say, what are our goals? What are our natural resource protection goals? And how far are we willing to go on this, because it will involve a mapping of areas that, right now, frankly, are dry upland areas that are dairy yards. Is that important? That's a big issue that we're gonna have to be looking at. And there are other limitations that we have in our current ordinance. Now, there's also another thing I want to bring up too, is we have to get more specific about our mapping in shoreline zoning. The reason being is that there have been several cases, I think I brought this up to the board before when we were discussing things in May, but those cases are still sticking. And that's the case of when we do mapping, our current zoning, current shoreline zoning mapping and our current shoreline zoning legislation specifies that the shoreline zones actually exist where the conditions, field conditions exist, and not necessarily where the map shows them to be. The law court, state of Maine, both in decisions in Scarborough and in Kennebunk, has stated that they don't agree. That the towns and the municipalities and the state should take greater efforts in actually mapping these conditions where possible. So if we have conditions such as shoreline habitat, deer yards, wetlands exceeding 10 acres, that we have to map those, or we at least should indicate those on the map. The shoreline zoning map is not going to be illustrative, it's going to be more actual, the way we do our regular zoning maps. At least that's what the court has said thus far. Okay. How that gets shaken down by MMA, I haven't gotten any input on that. I'm supposed to go to a seminar on this thing later on this.
Isn't shoreland defined by the state? The conditions?
Yeah, actually the language of it actually being representative, that it's based on field conditions and not necessarily the map, does in fact defy the state's definition.
Right, so the state's defining it, the state's saying you need to identify them, but nobody's paying us to do that?
That's right. Yeah, are you going to make a mention of by any chance of an unfunded mandate? Is that what you're basically?
It sounds a lot like it, yes.
Yeah. Well, see, I have the same concern. Yeah.
Because to go out, I mean, I agree. If we're going to put it on a map, it should be surveyed to a certain level of accuracy, but that's expensive, and that's why it hasn't been done.
That's why it hasn't been done. We have levels of accuracy in our aerial mapping, which makes it much more feasible than it has been in the past, but it's also going to require ground truthing.
Right.
You know, frankly speaking, I can do this. I have the technical skills to be able to do this stuff. I just don't have the time to do this stuff.
You guys need to be focusing on the rest of the ordinance
first.
Exactly, that should come later.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we have a liability here. We have an exposure here we're going to have to take care of. The first exposures deal with what we have for definitions in our ordinance right now that are exceeding what the state, the minimum standards of the state right now. We first want to deal with that. Then the second thing would be getting the rest of the ordinance done. The third thing would be getting to better ground truthing of the actual boundaries of the shoreline zone. Now, I haven't jumped on this. I haven't budgeted for this. I haven't made a pitch to you guys yet about this, or to you and Todd, because I want to see what the other towns are doing.
Well,
I specifically want to see what Judy's going to do over in Canada, since she's the test case.
What you should do as a group of towns is all pitch in and do a LiDAR flight and do LiDAR mapping. You don't have to ground truth, you've got it all right there. But it's expensive for the community.
Very expensive.
But if you get that plane up in the air and you run that whole area, then you got it.
So we had that already, that was gonna be done already.
Well, we've already done one, but I mean, it's
It was
not.
last year, wasn't it?
No, LiDAR we did?
We just did an aerial photograph.
Yeah, no, that's.
No, we didn't do LiDAR. Well, we had it's a good aerial photograph. It's much more accurate than we had before. Because we were working on 2005 images.
But LiDAR actually gets through the canopy and
Yeah,
all
it
that.
does. And this does, and this is just regular digital map. So,
Stuff ahead of us.
Yeah, well, especially in Arundel, we actually, a lot of a lot of our concern, our areas of concern have to be under commit first.
Do we have
So-
anything coming up in the next 2 weeks?
The applications. Cool. Now, the question is, we have something to do. You just committed to another meeting.
Well, no.
No, Dan committed to another meeting.
I was going to ask, since, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm brain dead from the ordinance. And I don't know, if we have nothing coming up for the next meeting, do we want to work on the ordinance, or do we want to just take the night off and come back at the end of August and start up?
Let's get her done.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to have a nice night.
I
We gotta
wanted
work.
to give you the option, guys.
Yeah, well, I like your option, but
I certainly would not support that, big time, and I don't think the rest of the board would either.
Well, no, they probably wouldn't, but I wanted to give them the option. I am not going to be here, but maybe for the next meeting, but maybe we could work on tying up the townhouse corner, taking into consideration some of the suggestions that came up tonight.
Is that the priority board?
Well, I think the ordinance itself should be the priority for the board.
The whole thing is, yeah.
And,
But
and
you want to work on that district, or you want to work on structure?
Well,
We have two more to write before we even get to the residential district.
yeah, so for me, and just take this with a grain. This is recent. This is mindful. We've got the information. We're aware of it. We probably forming opinions, all of us. I like recency, and then I like to put things to bed.
Yep.
So my vote would be, let's get the townhouse corner done the way we feel it is. Schedule a meeting later on, sometime before the thing. That doesn't have to happen, but then as board, we will have gone through it. We will have had it recently. We're all aware of what the comments were. We're all aware of how we voted in the past. So everything that was said, you may want to take, but some of it you may not. Now's the best time to do it.
That would be my thought on it. The best time to address this would be in 2 weeks at the meeting.
Yeah, I think we should go townhouse corner district in 2 weeks.
Terrific, okay, what do you guys want to do? What do you want to do?
I mean, more than anything, it's a matter of our taking the ordinance, taking all of the comments that we've got. Are we gonna make changes in here? And if so, what are those changes gonna be? We should be able, there was enough information given to us that we should be able to finalize that.
I think so too. And I think from your minutes, as you develop your minutes, that you ask what do you want you to do, I think from the minutes, like you did before, you have issues and concerns. Those things that you believe to really be right, that needs change, like we really need to identify small scale, and what is small scale? We need to look at that development density. Was that confusing, that 80%? It wasn't before, but it is now.
I was right, I mean, 16, you could put a 16,000 square foot
I
building.
know we spent a lot of time on that little chart, but now looking at it, it doesn't make sense.
Well, you know, that really bugged me too. I looked at that and said, wait a minute, I don't remember.
Yeah, what the hell?
What happened there?
So,
Because we usually have coverage, we have lot coverage, not building coverage, lot coverage.
I know there's a reason we did that, but it doesn't come to
I
light.
don't
Well, I
remember
think-
why
I
in the
think
world
the-
that's there.
I think the other one, we did two things. We did the linear frontage, and then we did building.
On the signage?
I thought, holy crap, what?
Yeah. you
So
know,
I just shut up. So, I mean, that's an area, I want to say, you did it, but you know the most about that and how it was structured and that.
I'm gonna just go with building and let the landlord beat it up.
Really think, everybody, John Huff Lane. I mean, we added that back in with the all best of intention, but I don't think anybody thought about 3 businesses growing up back there and passing through that front person's residence.
And
I don't think any of us considered
One
that.
of which sounds like a contractor yard.
Let's say.
Well, there are,
let's
there
put
are
it
all
this way.
contractor yards, and the only reason why this came up is because we haven't passed contractor storage yard yet, which would legitimize these guys right now.
Yeah.
Because they have no aspirations to do anything but be contractor storage yards.
Well, then.
They just don't want to be non-conforming uses, that's what they don't want to be.
So maybe they shouldn't be on that, then, that takes care of half of it, get the contractor storage yard. Because I think if I lived out there too, and we've made a concerted effort with everybody really trying to consider bringing them in, taking them out, we didn't want to be, and there's several examples. But in that one, we didn't have the other half of this, right? Never even considered.
Well, the other thing is you make it that depth, okay? You're actually turning out at having the depth bigger than what you have on your Route 1.
It's not 2,000 feet back there.
Yeah, but when, yeah,
That's
that's
a contradictory.
it's two lots.
It's 2, oh, it's 3.
It's 3 of them
Well,
on the maps.
But what I'm just saying is you only have at present 1,000 feet, and if that goes 2,000 feet.
I think then we could go right down through them with your recommendation and thoughts on those.
Well, let me ask you, want contractor storage yards out there as part of the townhouse?
I thought we already did contractor storage.
We did, I'm talking about the uses, remember, we did contractor
Right.
storage
Are we
yards.
gonna
but
put that in
this
the
is
user townhouse
I'm
corner?
gonna put that in the townhouse corner, I'll ask you that right now. Pull out those contractor storage
Well,
yards.
but
Well, no, see, that's different. Contractor storage yard wouldn't be appropriate for all of the ones along the street.
Probably not.
Okay.
if they're out back.
But if we go up,
There is no
if we
outback,
cross
that's the
John
problem.
Clough Lane, then we've just put contractor storage yards in that entire district.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we don't, contractor storage yards are, the way it was written, would have been allowed in the other districts. They
The
would be-
R4 district, if this is an R4
And it's
district.
in R4 district. So by taking them out of the townhouse corner district, they revert back to R4. Contractor storage yards are
It's
allowed in
allowed,
R4.
absolutely.
They got what they want, the people got what they want. Seems
I tried to explain that to John, and Richard loved it. I told him about that, but we felt more comfortable having a business.
Well, I think because of their concern, then he could build whatever he wanted back there, maybe.
Yeah, I
Make
think it's a
it a
good
much bigger
compromise.
contract yard.
One thing we haven't looked at,
Yes.
at all along that way, is what your water is.
Oh, I have.
We've got two
Okay.
different standards.
There's no water, there's no public water there. There's a stub. There's a stub right there at the town line, but it doesn't go up.
And what about all,
It goes down
Garnet
Rundle
Plumbing?
Road. It goes
Garnet
down
Plumbing.
Rundle Road. It does go down the Rundle Road, but it does not go up Log Cabin.
No, what I'm saying, look, when I thought I went by, unless that's a fire dry hydrant, Garnet Plumbing, which is on the Kennebunk Port side, there's a fire hydrant there.
Yeah. No reason. The map shows it's stopping at Wings.
Just asking a question.
No, it's a
Because the
legitimate
fact
question.
is,
I was just looking at I'm just talking
Those are
about,
good
I
things
just
to
looked at the
consider when people are putting in
map.
their building too. to make
Showed
sure
it stopping before Wings.
One other thing to think about, do we want to prevent traffic going out Senate Road? Because she's right, that lot goes to Senate Road, and you can put a driveway
right,
there, and
that's
drive
right.
right through.
but
Do we
the other
want
thing,
to make
Yes.
make access from Log Cabin only?
one question is also, you still have properties that are in Kennebunk Port,
Yeah.
and they can do whatever they want, and they'll access,
Yeah,
in the
no, I-
business district. That's where, just,
It's one
On
piece,
Senate Road.
it's one piece of property that
Street.
happened to be there. I don't know that, I mean, so to solve that, you're gonna punish the people that own property. And I don't mean punish, but restrict.
Yeah, because if you say no access, what if residential access would be okay?
Yeah, residential
You
would
can't
be.
just say no
We're
access.
saying,
I think with, I think.
they're worried about four properties.
They're worried about something big
You
scale.
gotta look at scale, I think
There-
if you can
That's
make it defined
And
as
at
a
the
small
beginning of
scale.
the permitted uses, I'd like to see that
Small
statement
scale.
about scale. There will be no development under that, blah, whatever it is. you know.
Yep.
This is intended to be
So
small
what scale do you want?
5,000 feet,
Yeah.
just a number.
Well,
I think the biggest thing that we allow there is 5,000 square feet.
Retail.
So,
No,
four products.
low impact manufacturing is at 6, the new one.
The new ruling is at 6, you're right. So then say 6,000
Yeah,
square
what's
feet.
another 1,000 square feet?
How many acres is 4 products?
Oh, no.
I don't think the acreage would make a difference. If the intent is to say that we want it to be small scale, define how big small scale.
small scale, you don't wanna have, it's traffic impact, it's noise, it's hours of operation. And maybe we put part of that comprehensive plan thing right at the
Well,
beginning.
I gotta have regulations to do this, guys. I mean, you know, well, you can have all the best intents, but they're right. If you have a situation where you have a use in there that's not heavily regulated in some way, I mean, all that has to do is meet the conditions, and they're in. And so, you know, we're gonna have to have something for, some sort of measurable scale for scale.
You can throw
So we need to come up with.
a daily
that
trip
number.
count on there, a minimum,
It
maximum
could,
daily
it
trip
could
count.
be, it could be a ADT, you're right. It could be an ADT, could be square footage.
We could do
ADT is
ADT,
actually
shoot wings in the foot.
better. But it would kill some, it might kill some projects. I mean,
You could shoot winks in the foot with an ADT.
could.
Yeah, not, their existence wouldn't affect them, but if they were trying to move into the district, they wouldn't be able to, based on trip count.
Well, I mean, it depends what you put for trip count.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I stopped listening.
All right.
Okay.
But we jumped,
Fair time.
we really
At any
took
rate-
some jumps on that one.
You guys have some
We're
stuff
tired
to
of
do
it.
for next week, for 2 weeks.
I will put together what I can in a week.
Second.
Okay?
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to adjourn, all in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, we're out of here.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, you think that was successful? Oh, let me turn this off.
I paused this for you.
Thank you.
I think that went
I-
fairly
And I
well.
think
Yeah, I
we
think
gotta,
those lists
I
are
think we
just-
gotta record